Okay, APE students, let's take a look at worksheet number 4. We're going to start off with some calculations. So our first problem says to perform the following calculations. A rectangular area of forest that measures 10,000 meters by 300,000 meters has an area, and of course the answer's there, but we want to see how you got that answer. So let's go ahead and figure out it's 10,000 meters times 300,000 meters, which gives us 3 times 10 to the 9th meters squared. We know that 1 kilometer has 1 times 10 to the 6th meter squared, so that gives us 3 times 10 to the 3rd kilometer squared, which is the answer that's filled in the problem up there for you. But then it also asks for hectares. So 100 hectares is equal to 1 kilometer squared. And so that's 3 times 10 to the 5th hectares. So you can go ahead and add that all in. A 60-watt light bulb that is used for an average of 4 hours each day uses, and it gives you the answer, 87.6 kilowatt hours of electricity per year. A little bit more convoluted to understand, but right here what we have going on is think of the monkey bars or the ladders. So we start with 60 watts. We want to convert that to kilowatt hours, so 1,000 watts to 1 kilowatt hour one day, and we're using it for 4 hours a day. And we're using it for 1 year for 365 days. If we multiply all that by the top, divide by the bottom, we get 87.6 kilowatt hours of electricity per year. 2 characteristics of an R-related species and 2 characteristics of K-selected species. This is a great list here. And then there is a bunch that you can add. The ones that I chose, so if you look at those R-selected species and you think of something that's like that, something like a mosquito or something like that. Okay, so it has a short life and rapid growth, early maturity, many small offspring, little parental care and protection, little investment in individual offspring, adapted to unstable environments because they reproduce so quickly. They're often pioneers or colonizers, meaning they're the first to move into an area. They're generalists, which means their niche, they will live a variety of places. They're often prey for other species. They're regulated mainly by intrinsic factors, and they're low on the trophic level. Of the 2 that I picked to write down, I put down many small offspring and little parental care. That, to me, is sort of, when I think of those things, if I can remember that's an R species, the rest of it sort of falls into place. K-selective, think of something like elephants or humans or whales. Long life, slower growth, late maturity, few large offspring, high parental care or protection, high investment in individual offspring, adapted to a stable environment. Later stages of succession they come in. They're specialists in terms of what their habitat is. They're often predators. They're regulated by extrinsic factors, and they're high on the trophic level. Again, the 2 that I chose to put down are few large offspring and high parental care. Here's a couple that we need to fill in. A Pacific yew is a conifer or some sort of pine tree, and it's endangered because it's been over-harvested to produce breast and lung cancer drugs. A piping plover is a bird that is endangered because of habitat destruction of the nesting areas due to coastal development. So you might see piping plover signs at the beach. I know I saw a lot of them. Noise and disturbance cause the females to abandon their nests, so it's become endangered because of that. An orangutan is an ape, and it's endangered because of habitat destruction caused by the deforestation for palm oil. Palm oil is in just about everything, and they're cutting down a lot of that rainforest to grow palm oil plantations. There's all sorts of documentaries about palm oil. And the dodo was a bird that is extinct because it was over-harvested because it was a delicacy to Dutch sailors. Why these 4 specific organisms? They have known to be sort of prominent on the AP test. They've all sort of shown up as sort of a question. So it's good to make you familiar with those ones. So complete this table, okay? And so now we're looking at ecosystem services. So what services do these things provide that we don't pay for? So honeybees, they pollinate, particularly orchards. We don't pay them to do that. The water cycle deals with the purification and the transport of nutrients. Forests are for purification of air and soil, erosion prevention. We also talked about them being a cultural benefit because people like to go hiking in them. Bats like to pollinate, they can pollinate plants. They regulate the mosquito population and they disperse seeds. Bacteria, they break down wastes in landfills, potentially other toxins. But when I think of bacteria, I think of the nitrogen cycle because remember, it's a part of many steps of the nitrogen cycle. Coral reefs, they're good for storm protection and they're habitat for aquatic life. And then wetlands they filtrate water and they're also for storm protection. A company is importing rare tropical hardwood to manufacture furniture. Lists 3 laws, regulations, treaties, or acts that the company may have violated. So just to bring some of these to the forefront, we talked about CITES. CITES is that international trade of endangered species. That was important to get the manta ray on the CITES, if you remember back to racing extinction. The Lacey Act prohibits the interstate transport of wild animals without a permit. And then the Kyoto Protocol is a commitment to reduce GHG, which is greenhouse gas emissions. The production of lumber would do the opposite because removing trees help us remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Whaling is justified in the name of, and the word you need to fill in there is scientific research by the countries of Norway, Iceland, and Japan. Okay, so I know there's only 2 blanks, but there's several countries. 2 islands, different distances from the mainland, have different rates of extinction. This is explained by the theory of the island biogeography. So remember, we looked at how islands become habited, how far they are from the mainland, and how large they are. So size can play a difference, and distance from the mainland can play a distance. And the closer they are, the more species they have, and the larger they are, the more species and the slower the rate of extinction is. So small islands that are far have a much higher rate of extinction. For 12, dredging is the ecologically damaging fishing technique typically used to harvest scallops, crabs, and shrimps from the sea floor. So we drag that along and it uproots the bed of the ocean. Fishing practice that is commonly used to catch large solitary species of fish and was featured in The Perfect Storm is long line fishing. So putting out those long lines with bait on it to catch fish. 71% of the earth is covered with water. Of all the water on earth, 96.5% of it is salt water. 69% of it is frozen, and 1% of it is available and relatively accessible. So remember that 1%, a lot of that is polluted. Okay, so we're looking at that ground ice, permafrost, that water can exist in a lot of different places. And the significant part is that only 1% of it is really what's accessible of all the water on the planet. Arrange the following particles in order from smallest to largest. Now this diagram is really good, which is why it's here, but it does the opposite. So our smallest particle is clay, okay? It's invisible at this scale, okay? Silt, look how tiny that silt is, and then look how large sand is, and then this would be gravel. And so that gives you a really good, I think, visual representation. But if you were going to, in order from smallest to largest, clay, silt, sand would be the order in which you would list them.